get two guinea fowls in South Africa, one the helmeted and the other the crested. And the crested is a ridiculous looking creature. It's got this kind of floppy hat of black feathers. It does look totally ridiculous. Alright, let's press on from here and see what else awaits us around the corner. Some information just confirming one or two things from the inimitable Stefan Winterboer. And just watch your heads here, everyone. He says monkeys can in fact breed once a year in some cases, and normally between September and February, so quite a large range of birthing time, and gestation period is more than 3 months. That's quite interesting. It's 165 days, so actually almost 5 months. Thank you for that, Steph. Nice to end up with egg in your face on dryer. Excellent stuff. Right. Oh, I don't know. We can't go that way. We'll end up in the Arathusa camp. Some Swainson's Franklin. Don't often see them. Now, we have a new wee viewer called Travis, who's just 7 years old in Pennsylvania. And Travis, I believe that you're a little under the weather. You're not feeling so well, so you're at home and not at school, which is a much better place to be, I think. And you're watching this and you're amazed that you can speak to somebody here in South Africa. Well, Travis, I'm astonished that I'm able to speak to you all the way in Pennsylvania. That is called a Swainson's Franklin, that bird there. But Travis, you say that you would like to see a monitor lizard. We had an amazing monitor lizard sighting on Arathusa the other day. But Travis, you really got to be very lucky to see a monitor lizard. They don't often sort of walk across the roads, but we do sometimes see them at the waterholes, and I know that there are a few around the Djuma waterhole, so keep an eye on the Djuma Dam cam if you're able to do that. Otherwise, we will definitely keep our eyes open for a monitor lizard. We get two kinds here. One, the rock or tree monitor, which has got a very stumpy nose. He looks like he's run into the back of a bus. And then the other is a water monitor, which is a very flat nose. Looks like a little bit like a miniature crocodile. Welcome, Travis. I hope you feel a bit better. Try and inhale some of the beautiful healing African air, and maybe that will make you feel a bit better. All the way from Pennsylvania. Now, a fascinating inquiry on the Hammerkop's nest from Stoke-on-Trent in England. I've heard of Stoke-on-Trent before, and it sounds like a good place to visit. I'm not sure what it's like this time of the year. But Pauline, you live in Stoke-on-Trent, and you want to know if there is some kind of snake that lives underneath the Hammerkop's nest as a sort of security guard, if there's maybe some kind of mutual relationship between the snake and the Hammerkops. Pauline, I haven't heard that before, you know. And the other thing that you say is that that snake makes sure that nothing comes and eats the chicks. Now, Pauline, I really haven't heard that, so I'd be very interested to know where that story comes from. Again, Steph, who's listening to this, might be able to tell us if I'm talking nonsense. But I can't imagine a snake that would have that kind of mutual relationship with a bird. But it's not impossible. You certainly do get that security guard arrangement with some nests, like a blue waxbill will make its nest in an acacia tree, and often next to a paper wasp nest or like a hornet's nest, and the hornets apparently do provide some kind of security detail, so any kind of snake that comes up and tries to take the little waxbill chicks will get stung quite hard by the hornets. And if you've ever been stung by a paper wasp or hornet, it is a deeply unpleasant affair. So I think our plan from here, everybody, is going to be to head on back towards Djuma and see what we can see that side. Not a lot going on here. So Michael put off while I do a bit of road maintenance here in Kansas City. That is a long way from here. I have also not been there. Michael, you want to know how many kinds of monkeys we get here? Well, in this particular area we only get one monkey. We also get a baboon though, which might be considered a monkey, I suppose. But in South Africa we get two kinds of monkeys, and that is the Samango monkey, which lives in the forests, normally on the coast and sometimes up in the mountains here on the Drakensberg, but they need forest to live in. They don't like to live in anything other than forest. And we've got the vervet monkey, and of course the Chacma baboon, which is might be considered a monkey, although it's a little bit further related from them. And interestingly, none of the great apes in South Africa, the chimpanzees and gorillas, are all up in the forests of Central Africa. And I'm not sure that they ever actually occurred here. Alright, so we'll wander down towards the end of the Arathusa airstrip and see what we can find there. We're still chatting about the monkeys, and we saw a female with a little baby. And D. Phillips, you want to know how do you tell the difference between a male and a female? It's actually the way you tell is pretty obvious. From the Afrikaans name, the monkey that we see, the vervet monkey, is known as the blauw aap, which means the blue monkey, and I think that has quite a lot to do with the fact that the males have got a enormously bright blue set of testicles, and the scrotum is a bright cobalt blue color, a bit like that guinea fowl's head. So that's what the males have. They're also much bigger, than the females. So if they were youngsters of the same age, then you'd have to look between their legs to know the difference. But if they were adults, the males are much bigger, they're stockier, they're not quite as elegantly built as the females are. And then if they get a bit dominant, they do have that bright blue scrotum. So we're now on the Arathusa International Airstrip. I remember saying that a little while back, and it created a bit of consternation because people thought this was actually turning into an international airstrip where a Boeing 747 might land and disgorge its passengers into the wilderness of the Sabi Sands. Fear not. I joke a little. It's just, they have discovered it in asphalt because it's just a bit safer. You can use it in all weather, and there are one or two more planes coming in, but certainly not big planes here, or very small planes come to land at Arathusa. It's the first decent airstrip that there is in the northern Sabi Sands. There are quite a few in the south and in the west, but none around here. So if you ever come here, you can fly directly into the lodge. You don't need to drive. You can land at OR Tambo International Airport, and you can fly straight out into here. Monkeys, and it cost You say the black howler monkeys of Costa Rica, when they're threatened or when they're nervous, they void their bowels and then run away. And you want to know if our monkeys do the same sort of thing. I'm just going to stop here. No, I'm not. I'm going to keep going. You want to know if our monkeys do the same thing. Ruth, I haven't seen them do it, but I think it's probably quite likely. I know that there are many, many species that will do that. As soon as they're given a big fright, they void their bowels and they run. And what that is I think it's a response to, first of all, no, you don't want to carry any extra weight. It probably deters predators if they're suddenly hit in the face by a whole lot of effluent, which you don't really want. And then I also think that what your body does if you're given a big fright is it removes, or if you're going to shock, is it removes blood from anywhere but the most essential parts of your body. So it'll take it to your brain, it'll take it to your heart, but so it'll remove blood and sort of a coordination from your bowels, which if you're about to run away from something are not particularly important. So that's why it happens. And so I would imagine if you give a monkey here enough of a fright, yeah, I think it probably would happen. Great question, that, Ruth. Now, here is the air traffic control tower. Difficult to bring in a 747 from here. There, you've got to do it with sort of hand and extra large ping pong bats. Not so, Brian.
That's true.
Let's do what I can. Not a huge amount going on at the bottom of the stairs. I was rather teeming herds to be streaming across the plains. There were certainly teeming amounts of dust. And we're right at the very southern tip of our traversing area. Flies and dust. The section that we're on now, Arathusa, is about 600 hectares, and in acres you multiply that by 2.5. I thought we were live already. Stand by, everyone. I'm a little confused as to what's going on.
Clearly James lost signal, that's why you hurriedly jumped onto my vehicle, and you've joined at a good time. I love driving through this riverbed. I find it very therapeutic and relaxing, and it's been quite some time since I have taken a drive through here. Now, not only is it beautiful scenery and surrounding, and on a hot day like this, I can't help but think there may be one or two animals that are also thinking of being in a cool spot. This isn't how it's supposed to go. So let me reverse a little bit and try again. There we go. It's also one of my favorite places to see a leopard, in a sandy riverbed. I think it's one of the kind of ideal places to view a leopard. So hopefully that may happen. Once or twice we've had leopard sightings in this riverbed, but not as frequently as I would like to have. There's a bachelor herd of impala here. Sadly, most of them have disappeared off, but we should be able to get you some views of them. So at least some animals are on the same wavelength as me, and thought the riverbed would be a good place to hang out. Hello, boy. And off they go. Well, our timing was a little bit off, and due to that we missed 2 honey badgers on cheetah cutline. Jamie was, and still is, out trying to track down any interesting animals for us, and about 2 or 3 minutes after we had passed by Cheetah Cutline Hippo Pools Junction, she popped out there and there was 2 honey badgers running around. But sadly we were too far away to respond, and it wasn't long before they disappeared east into Torchwood. But I'm very happy for her, because honey badger sightings are few and far between. I haven't managed to share one with you guys during one of the live safaris. I have seen a handful though whilst tracking, but 1 or 2 honey badgers have been seen. I think James has managed on several occasions to show you honey badger. 2 animals that we have yet to show you in the year that I've been here are the pangolin and the aardvark. So those are 2 animals that hopefully in time we will be able to add to the list of mammals that we have managed to show you. They're incredibly rare in this area, and in my whole life I've only ever seen 1 pangolin. How rare they are. Speaking of mammals that we don't see or you haven't seen yet, Chris in Arizona would like to know if we get meerkats here in the Sabi Sands. And Chris, sadly no, we don't get meerkats here. They occur in typically drier, more arid areas in the southern parts of South Africa. So there is no chance we will be able to show you one here. But like I keep telling you guys, the more people that join on these safaris, hopefully the more places we will be able to take you. So spread the word, and then maybe one day we'll be able to go and film a little 2 or 3 month safari in meerkat country, or in tiger country, gorilla country, chimp country. It's never ending where we could go. And I'm certainly hoping that is the case sooner rather than later. This is quite interesting. These may be possibly the world's longest thorns. Take a look at this. Can you believe it? 1 thorn, that long. Phenomenal. This is an acacia tree. Not all of its thorns are this long, but scary to think that there are such big thorns out here. Be perfect for kebabs, I guess, if you're making kebabs, or as we call them here in South Africa, sasatis. on the topic of animals that we might see, but maybe you guys don't get to see that often. Mike in Florida would like to know, what little critters do we find around our camps? And we find geckos, little nocturnal lizards are running around at night, hunting insects around the lights. A lot of insects do get attracted to the lights in and around our camp, so lots of bugs, especially in the summer months. A couple of scorpions from time to time, rats and mice. Also, like our choice of cuisine, and therefore are seen running around our kitchen from time to time, but we try and prevent that from happening for obvious reasons. So yeah, quite a few little critters, but nothing out of the ordinary, I guess, and we aren't exactly plagued by them, so that's why my list is not very comprehensive for you, Mike. Get there, get there. Nearly. This is not a good sign. Come on, Jigger. Please start. There we go. Just gonna get out and check under the vehicle quickly. I can smell something that's not quite right. I'm not sure what it is. I am certainly no mechanic, but I was just hoping I may be able to see something leaking from under the vehicle, which I couldn't. And we're going to send you across to James, and that way I'll be able to have a closer look as to what could be causing this mysterious smell.
We have come back to Djuma, everybody. I'm afraid you lost us on Arathusa there. That's because we were at the very southern tip of where we can go. And old Wendy, well, she's a recalcitrant old bag, really, most of the time. And that was just a bridge too far for her to cross. I believe Scott is having trouble with the other recalcitrant bag that we have on the fleet, and that's old Jigger. So you're with us now. Some impala up ahead, so we'll have a look at them. Two rams, and the ewes are starting to look enormously pregnant, and I use the term enormous in all of its many ways. And here, quite interestingly, you can see why impala are so successful. Where most of the antelope out here are either browsers or grazers, impala are completely comfortable eating grass or the leaves off trees. And what that one was doing was eating the leaves off a very new, what looked like a silver cluster leaf tree. It is now a silver cluster leaf stick in the ground. So while many of the grazers will be really struggling now as the initial flush of green is being burnt to a crisp by the temperatures and the drying winds, these impala will be just fine. As long as they have water to drink, and they will have water to drink at Djuma or at the Arathusa Dam. Well, it's a bit far for these chaps, but they can pop up to the Djuma Dam at any stage. Right. Thank you, Brian. a chat with Pauline from Stoke-on-Trent in England the other just now, not the other day, about 20 minutes ago really. And Pauline, you said you've been in the Okavango and that your guide told you about the snake that lived underneath the hammerkop's nest. Pauline, I hate to say this, but I fear that you may have been sold down the river slightly with that story. I might be wrong. I will completely own it if I am wrong, but I've just never read that about a hammerkop's nest. So I will do a little bit more research and see if we can't find whether or not a hammerkop's nest does in fact have a resident snake underneath. And I mean, the reason I'm pretty sure it doesn't is that at the lodge I used to work called Ngara, just north of here, you couldn't go out of the camp without seeing an enormous hammerkop's nest. And because of that, we had to learn everything there was to learn about it, because every time you went past it, people would go, "Oh my God, what's that?" And then you'd stop and you'd explain about the hammerkop's nest. And in order to stop yourself going stark raving insane, what you would do is learn as much as you could about it and then tell a slightly different story every single day. And so I've never heard the story of the snake. But Pauline, I'm more than happy to see that I might be wrong in the face of other evidence. Very blustery as well today. This wind is what's drying things out. The leaves are all curled over and the grasses are withering and the dust is coming up again. It's definitely an expectant kind of atmosphere. Saw us driving along the Arathusa airstrip just now, and Cameron, aged just 5, you want to know if the aeroplanes ever run the animals over. Cameron, they don't, and I'll tell you why they don't. They don't have a horn like you've suggested. What they do though is when they come over, they don't just come into land. They will normally fly around the airstrip first and make sure there are no animals there, and if there are, then they'll fly low over the airstrip and then the animals will run away and then they can land there. And often also, this is a rather magnificent kudu bull who is now running away at high speed just because we've seen so much else today. They are so magnificent, those bulls. We'll just sit here a little bit. There's another one there. We'll sneak a little bit forward. So Cameron, oh there we go, Brian's spotted one much closer that I missed. And you can see these are exclusively browsers. So Cameron, the other thing that they'll do is that if you're picking somebody up at the airstrip, the rangers will drive up there and just check that there are no animals on the airstrip. If they're elephants, then they will normally just, the aeroplane will circle around and wait for them to go away. But if they're small things like kudu or say warthogs, they're often on airstrips, then they'll be chased away. So that is a magnificent kudu bull. You've now seen all 3 tragelaphid or spiral-horned antelope today. We've seen the bushbuck and the nyala at Arathusa Dam, and now we can see the kudu. And they all browse exclusively, often at different heights, but they will eat leaves more than they'll eat anything else. And this particular one is eating the leaves of an apple leaf tree or rain tree. Yeah, that's what he's doing. It's called an apple leaf. You won't be able to hear it from where you are, but we can hear a little bit the leaves making the crunching sound that your teeth might make as it bites into a delicious tasting Granny Smith apple. Makes me quite hungry to think about, actually. Tell you why I was grinning there. We got so close to this kudu. They don't normally allow us to get anything like that close. He's been particularly confiding. It's really nice. Beautiful bull. I'll just stop here quickly. Travis, Travis, aged 7 in Pennsylvania. It is my pleasure to answer your question, so thank you for asking us. You are slightly confused. You are slightly confused about the fact that it's daytime here and nighttime where you are in Pennsylvania. Travis, this is not an easy thing to explain, but what I'm going to try and do, I can see some elephant dung up ahead, and I'm going to use that elephant dung to explain to you why it is daytime here and nighttime where you are. So Travis, hold on 1 second and I will explain it to you now. If I do a bad job of it, you'll have to ask your mum, and she might be able to tell you a bit more succinctly or better than I would be able to. Right, now, we need a big piece of dung and we need a small piece of dung. I will find them, fear not. Excuse me 1 second, Travis. I'm coming back now. Right, one piece. I need a slightly smaller one, but not too much smaller. That's not a very round piece of dung, this one. I tell you what, I know what we'll do. Right, Travis, this is the earth. This is the earth on which we live, okay? And this is the sun, okay? That's the sun. Now, Travis, for the purposes of this explanation, I live over here in South Africa, we live over there, and you live over here in Pennsylvania, right? Now, as you know, the earth spins like this, okay? And if this is the sun shining on the earth, you can see that where I live now, which is over here, it's daytime. But because the sun's you are this side of the earth, where the sun is not shining, that's why it's nighttime for you. But now as the earth spins, and so it becomes nighttime for me, so you can see how where you live over here, it becomes daytime. And that's why it works. So where you are in Pennsylvania, you're the opposite side of the world from where we are sitting here in Africa, at the southern tip of Africa, where it is still almost daytime. The sun's just gone down, so it's probably more like that. Okay, Travis, I hope that kind of explains to you why it's nighttime where you are and daytime where we are here. Right, on we go. Glad I remembered the spotlight, otherwise that would have been very difficult to do. Now I believe Scott is in some spot of bother, I'm afraid, in his car, and you may have seen a car racing off in front of us, and that was Jamie going to the rescue. Jamie is the most mechanically minded of the presenters, and so when there is a mechanical issue, it is her that we call first. I am the very last person to be called in a mechanical emergency. It's got a lovely plant too. Oh, this is very pretty. This is called a tall white squill, and it will eventually, those buds will produce a beautiful white flower. Isn't that pretty? That's really lovely. And they come up for a little while, they probably last 2 weeks or so, and then they just disappear, growing out of a bulb in the ground, and then they go dormant for the rest of the year. The tall white squill. I'll give you an idea of exactly how tall it is actually. Or how short in my case. There we go. I am 5'8", so this thing is probably almost 5 feet. So pretty tall little flower, very wobbly, and will have very lovely white flowers actually. I'm not sure why I did that. That was very odd. I think it's the heat getting to my brain. Right, on we go. Ah, yes. The heat has been known to do some strange things to people. So Mike in Florida, I think you're sort of some way to clearing up our discussion on the hammerkorps and our sort of debate on whether snakes live underneath them. As you said, monitor lizards and snakes will go into those hammerkorps nests and take the babies out. Now, they will also then take up residence there sometimes. And I think maybe that guide in Botswana said, or meant, or perhaps was under the impression that the snakes go in there, and it may be a local legend that they don't eat the hammerkorps chicks, but they will protect them. And I think you'll find that that's probably untrue. But like I say, I might be wrong. It wouldn't be the first time, nor, unfortunately, the last. And then Gilly, also in Wisconsin, and thank you. You say that is a myth about the hammerkorps. And then a lovely one from Elaine in Michigan about the a blind snake in the United States, which will be allowed to live in a screech owl nest because it cleans up some of the parasites. Now, if the U.S. blind snake is anything like our blind snakes, they're tiny little things like that mostly eat slugs and small invertebrates like that. So I imagine they would be tolerated in something like an owl's nest, and they would be more in danger from the owl, I suppose, than they would pose to any of the owl's chicks, or the adult owl itself. Lovely. Thank you very much for that, Elaine. That's fascinating. Maybe some of our blind snakes do the same thing and live in hammerkorps nests. That's possible. But I don't think they would be able to act as security detail. They really are tiny little things. Brian, have you noticed how cool it's got as the sun's gone down? Wow. Yeah. You're joking, everybody. It hasn't got vaguely cooler at all. It actually feels like a hairdryer is blowing on our faces. And I suppose to many of you who are regular watchers, we do comment quite a lot on the weather, and I've noticed it amongst local people here, the Shangaan people. Whenever you say, hi, how are you? The first thing you have to do is say, I'm fine, thank you, and how are you? Even if your leg has just been cut off, or you've been in you have sort of late stages of tuberculosis, you still have to say, I'm fine, thank you, and then you say, but I've just had my leg chopped off, so I'm not so well. But the other thing that you have to do is make a comment on the weather of some sort. So always you'll say, no, I'm fine, thank you, but gee, it's hot, or gee, it's cold. Never seems to be anywhere in the middle. And I think we talk a lot about the weather as well along those scales. Kind compliments for the demonstration of night and day on the dung, and Diane, you say well done. It's a very good joke, Diane, thank you for that. And Mark, you want me to do a bok drol spook. You want me to do a bok? I'm sorry, Diane, I'm just going to compose myself a second. Thank you. Mark, you want me to do a bok drol spook with a piece of elephant dung. Now, bok drol spook, for those of you who don't know, means basically means goat dung spit. and the size of my mouth will preclude any kind of boek with an elephant dung. Thanks very much for that though, Mark. Where's Steve Tyler to come from Aerosmith to come through here? He might be able to do boek with an elephant dung ball, but I will not, I'm afraid. So a few impalas here. We're heading down towards the Djuma Dam, and I'm going to sort of swim vicariously. It would be so nice to be in some cooling water now. And I'll just have a quick look at the impalas here, and on the other side there's a Nyala bull with some impalas, and he'll be using them as a security detail. They're very sharp, they like to hang out in groups, and they hear, smell and see very well. Well, there is a breeze blowing, everyone, but it's a pretty warm one. So we'll head down, ease our way down to the Djuma waterhole. So, another question about the different sort of climatic conditions, if you like, on various parts of the planet. Isabella, aged just 4 years old, you want to know why, if it's windy here and it isn't windy where you are at home. Isabella, you are so very, very far away from us that it's very different. So I don't know whereabouts in the States you are, Isabella, but if you're in California, the weather will be very different in New York, for example. And we are, if you take the distance between California and New York, we are more than 10 times that distance again. So we are so very far away from you. And that's why the weather's very different here. Astonishingly, there's now apparently one of these, there was a herd of elephants here, and the herd of elephants chased the hippo out of here, and he returned, but now he's disappeared down into the drainage line, which is down here, called the Umlulwati River. And so we'll just have a pop around there. I'm just inhaling the smell of moisture. It's really nice. I'll have to get in there myself. Don't think I will. Right, let's see if we can stop that hippo. We'll drive onto the dam wall here and look down there. Apparently he walked off about half an hour ago. I suspect, that water's probably quite hot, and so not providing that much relief for him. It's not very deep. As we go into the summer, of course, you will notice that the insects are attracted to light. Lots of insects. And Ravi, you want to know why it is that they're attracted to light. Ravi, as far as I understand it, what happens is that the light, a bright light for an insect, you say it seems suicidal. It is almost suicidal, but apparently it creates a kind of an automatic response in the nervous system, and what they do is they fly and they start to spiral towards the light, and then obviously they fly into it, and it would seem to be almost involuntary. So I don't think they do it on purpose. It probably has something to do with insects that are active at night are probably just overloaded. Their senses are overloaded by bright lights, which wouldn't normally occur. So I suspect that's what it is. So the hippo went down here, apparently, but I don't see him anywhere. He won't be a happy camper at the moment, especially having been chased out of the water by a whole herd of elephants. I wonder where the elephants went. We'll just ask Final Control to tell us, and then we might head off in that sort of general direction. Apparently the Ellies went up sort of this way, so we'll head vaguely up towards the Buffalo cut line and get a last look at the what will probably be quite an interesting horizon. It's very dusty in the air, still quite a lot of smoke actually from a few fires I think that have been around there, and we'll get a look there when we get a bit higher up. Scott, I've just had an update. He is having manned the fort so manfully for most of the afternoon. Jigger has decided that he or she is going on strike. It's not an uncommon occurrence for the Land Rover, especially an aging one. Wonderful question from John in Atlanta. John, this might be the first time we've heard from you. If it isn't, I apologize, and if it is, you're most welcome. You're asking questions about pangolins. Now, everybody, pangolins are sort of basically scaly anteaters. They look like, well, they don't look like armadillos, but they've got very hard scales. In fact, let me just quickly show you a picture, because otherwise this discussion will become particularly boring for you and you might go to sleep. We wouldn't want that, would we, Brian?
No.
No good having sleeping viewers, is it? No, they can't see anything. It's in this book somewhere, everybody. Here we go. I will find it eventually. No, I won't. It is in here. I've seen it here. No. Right, here we go. Whew. There is a pangolin, and it eats largely ants and termites. That is an otter, in case you were wondering, and below it is the aardvark or aardvark. But the pangolin in the middle is what we're talking about. So John, in Atlanta, you have made mention of the Asian pangolin, and you say that they're endangered because people use them for meat and for traditional medicines. And are the pangolin here endangered for the same reasons? To a certain extent, but no, not nearly as much, I don't believe. People do still try and get hold of the scales and sell them for traditional medicines out here, but you know, they are so uncommon and so secretive that it's really, and there are lots of studies done on them in these wildlife areas, but they're almost impossible to find here, although they are around and we sometimes see their signs. So I wouldn't say that they're totally unthreatened, but I think because of our large protected areas and their secretive natures, you'll find that they're probably okay. I've seen 2 pangolins in 10 years, so very, very unusual to see them, but they are around. Very nocturnal as well. So we're going to try and gain a bit of height here, and we'll get a bit of a view of the horizon, and hopefully bump into that herd of elephants that came down here to drink. They will be very hot at the moment. Something to eat, Brian. Have you missed your bush snacks while you've been away? You have?
I have.
Okay.
I'm very keen for a sour plum.
A sour plum I would love too. A sour plum, everyone, is like a reverse sour worm. So if you get a sour worm sweet shop, it starts off sour and becomes sweet. A sour plum here is this delightful looking orange fruit, and the best way to eat them is to freeze them first on a hot day like this and then suck them, and they're very sweet to start with, and then you get whacked with an extremely sour tart taste. But I think they'll only be out a bit later in the season. In-depth inquiry from virtual tourist in Texas. You want to know about paleoanthropology in the area, and are there any sites of diggings where those fossils of various primitive humanoids have been found. Nothing like that in this area, and I suspect it's because we don't have a history of sedimentary rock or limestone, and we don't have a history of caves in this area. Very ancient landscape this, and I think the chances of fossils being left in a place like this are almost negligible. Lots and lots of more recent stuff, and by more recent I mean we could be talking sort of 60,000, maybe even 100,000 years old. But that's just from tools and perhaps the odd midden site. But you see not a lot of caves around here, and definitely no fossil diggings in this particular area. I was in a cave actually this last weekend. I was in a big cave called Echo Cave, which is up in the foothills of the Drakensberg. And even in there seems to be very little in the way of fossils. Thank you for that, virtual tourist. But that doesn't mean, there is an extensive, like I say, extensive human history in this area. In terms of the local people that live here now, the Bantu peoples, they were probably here probably from about 500 to 900 AD. They came into this area, and certainly they were mining bits and pieces of gold from the rocks north of here, Tulamela, and at Mapungubwe from as recently as as long ago, shall I say, as 1300 AD, and they were trading actively with the coast. And they found Chinese beads up at Tulamela and Mapungubwe and up into Great Zimbabwe. And while I don't know how many of the people here actually made the trip to the coast, they were certainly trading with Arabs who came up and down the ancient trade routes that used to extend from here to the Mozambican coast. And they, of course, excuse us, would have been trading with the Chinese as they made their way across the Indian Ocean. So we're quite close to that kind of heartland, so bits and pieces of that sort of history are found. But that's obviously much more recent than paleoanthropological discoveries. Alright, so let's push up to the top of the hill here. Come on, Wendy. Too long left. Don't think about jigger. An interesting question from Gerda about what was described as a very mini watermelon this morning that Jamie found, and it wasn't identified. I didn't see it myself. I suspect that it was one of the cucumbers that we get out here, not an edible plant. And I did hear Jamie saying that it looked very poisonous, and I think if that's what it is indeed very poisonous. And I'll just quickly look. I think there's a picture of something like that in this book, but as you saw me very competently find the pangolin, my chances of finding the cucumber, here we go. No, that's the milkweed. I'll have a quick look. I do know of something very similar. Here we go. Now, did it look anything like that, perhaps? Now, there are a number of different kinds of those sorts of things. like this one here. Right, okay. That's interesting. That's a very hard squash-like thing called Lagenaria spherica, and it is indeed a toxic plant. You don't want to be eating that. They're very hard. They're like sort of a gem squash that is uncooked, and that's Lagenaria spherica, and they grow in a creeper in various trees, and they come out around about this time of year. They look like little planets. I think they're rather marvelous looking things. Don't want to be eating them, and I do quite a lot of eating, of sampling of different things out here, and it is really best not to be doing that unless you really can identify what it is that you're going to eat, and Lagenaria spherica would be one of the things not to sink your teeth into. So Brian, if we see one, I'm afraid you can't eat it. Sorry about that. Now, we saw a picture of that little pangolin earlier, and Heidi in Canada, you want to know, do they walk on 2 legs or on 4? Heidi, they can walk on 2 or 4, but they have got smaller front legs, like you say, but they're very powerful. They're very powerful digging claws they have on the front, and so they'll kind of sit on their haunches while they're digging and scrabbling around with their front legs. And then when they're moving, they can probably take a few steps on 2 legs, but they will use 4 legs to run. Not like a sort of, like a Tyrannosaurus with those funny little hands at the front. So we're now on the very northern end of our traverse. Obviously we lost us last time on the very southern end, and we're now on the far northern section of a place called Buffelshoek. And I'm going to just have a quick look at the mountains once we get to the top of this hill here. Here is the sun again, shining. Been conned by a number of cat-like looking termite mounds and stumps today. Angie in the United Kingdom, on the subject of cats, do we get lynx here, you say, and what other small cats do we get? We don't get lynx, Angie. We get something very similar called a caracal. It's a bit bigger than a European lynx, if I'm not mistaken, but it's also got those funny little ear tufts on the end of its ears. And the other smaller cats that we get are servals and African wildcats. Those are the 2 other ones. An African wildcat looks like a domestic cat with long legs, and a serval is the most beautiful thing. It's also just like an enormous house cat, basically, but with the pelage or fur of a leopard. It looks a bit like a leopard, sort of gold with black spots. Very, very beautiful indeed. This is where the last tracks, around about where the last tracks of Karula were. So it would be marvellous to see her. You say you've seen a hippo eating the elephant dung, and does this happen? Or you thought you saw it? And absolutely. Hippo do eat elephant dung, because remember that elephants have extremely poor digestive systems, and so what that means is that there is quite a lot of nutrition left, and partially digested nutrition, in a piece of elephant dung. So absolutely, an elephant produces not only fertilizer for the ground, but it will produce a bit of a meal for some other animals. Nice one, Anne. And then Gracie, aged 8, of course. You want to know if I've ever eaten anything out here, a bug or something like that, that's made me throw up? Not quite, but almost. Gracie, I've eaten something called a stink bug, which is a disgusting little insect. Well, you get different kinds of them, but the one I'm talking about is about that big, tiny little thing. and they come in big swarms at some times of the year, and they land in your food if you're not careful, and then you bite into one, and it is a very terrifying experience because all you want to do is go and spit everything out of your mouth very quickly because they taste very disgusting. That's a little black stink bug. Yeah. Any luck, a leopard will pop out onto the road, but maybe not. It is quite astonishing how the temperature has hardly dropped at all as the sun has gone down. Whew. I'm looking forward to a large glass of iced water when we return home. Let's stop and have a listen to the sounds of the night, or the evening. We've come to that wonderful time of the day known as the changing of the guard. Right, we'll just have a little listen now. Really can't hear a lot at the moment except for the buzzing of the cicadas, and you can hear the odd Franklin calling, buzzing of a drongo, and the odd white-browed scrub robin making the last call of the day. Good news, everyone. Scott Dyson and Jamie, I told you she was mechanically minded, have managed to get Jigger going, and let's go and get an update from him. We'll carry on down this road and try and find some tracks of Karula. See you just now.
So, we have just been digging around in the hood of this vehicle, thankfully with a mechanic called Opa, who some of you have met. He's our local resident mechanic, and he's a lifesaver and a really wonderful, positive guy, and thankfully his positivity helped, and knowledge, I guess, helped work out where the problem was coming from. And it seems like one of the injectors into the engine, kind of where the spark plugs are at the top of the engine, was leaking ever so slightly, and it was leaking fuel. And when he arrived, interestingly enough, it had stopped leaking fuel. So it's obviously got something to do with the engine heating up. And we are just going to putter along now back to the workshop, where he will begin to take this car apart and get the problem fixed. So at least he knows where the issue is, and now it's just a matter of fixing it. So nothing too serious, it seems. And Jamie went and collected him from the workshop and came out with Stefan, and we all jointly made the decision that we can very safely get back to camp as long as we drive slowly. I hope you've been having fun with James. I've no doubt that you have. So I'll get my spotlight out. There we go. And what shall we find on the way home? Anything is possible. I'd love to know where Karula is. She seems to have disappeared off our radar. Nobody's come up with any tracks of her today. Nor Kunyuma, one of her sons, a young male leopard who's about approaching 3 years old now, and he was seen in this general area that we're in now about 3 days ago, and since then there's been no sign of him. Maybe he's made a big kill something like an impala that he's managed to stash up in a tree, out of the way of the hyenas, which would normally try and steal it. But once a leopard has successfully got a kill into a tree, the only thing it has to worry about is really other leopards stealing it, bigger or stronger leopard, or a very slight chance that lion may try and climb up there. But lions aren't good climbers, so unlikely that would be the case. And speaking of lion, there's been no further updates as to where those 2 Birmingham males and 1 Styx female who were seen just across our eastern boundary this morning. There's been no sign of them. Guides haven't had any luck locating them as far as I've heard. But the good news is, and I'm not sure if James has mentioned this, that the Investec breakaway pack of wild dog have been steadily moving south from the Manyanetti. Now they're in Buffelshoek, and tomorrow morning, if they continue the way they have been, they will in all likelihood be in Djuma. And that's a pack of 3 adults and 10 pups, I think, remain now. Interesting the timing of their return, because had they been in this area a few days earlier, there's a chance that they would have run into the much bigger and more dominant pack of the Sabi Sands pack, which is 10 adults and 9 pups was our last head counts. And it would be tragic to see a wild dog on wild dog battle, because I fear the Investec pack would come unstuck. Hello to Janine, and thank you very much for your question, because it's a good reminder for everyone. And Janine's interested to know, when will Brent be back? And for those of you who are new to the Safari Live show, Brent is one of the other presenters here. Wonderful guy, huge experience in the industry, and he's going to be getting back tomorrow, Janine. So maybe tomorrow afternoon you'll see him on drive, or maybe we will go easy on him and allow him to acclimatize before sending him out into the bush. It all depends on how he's feeling, how we're feeling, and in the coming few days though you will certainly get to see him though. And it sounds like he's had a great holiday. He's been doing some fishing, and that's something that he loves to do, so happy to hear that he's had a good break. Try and keep you on my vehicle as long as possible before I get to the workshop. That's why I'm driving slowly. And Deborah in Kentucky, don't worry, we should have a beautiful elevated view in about 2 or 3 minutes when we get up to the quarantine clearings. Deborah's asked for a sunset view. It's a little bit late now, but let's see what happens when we get up there. I'm sure we might be able to work out some kind of a pretty shot with the silhouette of a marula. But there doesn't seem to be too much ambient light out to the western horizon, not too much of a glow out there. Well, I could well be dreaming, but there's a small chance I've spotted an owl. So, let's see. It was a dream, but I'm happy to reveal what my dream was with all of you. There's that funny kind of broken branch there, which I think can be excused as an owl. a snake. That's one thing I'd really love to show with you before the end of the safari tonight. D. Phillips asks a tricky question, and a question that is impossible to actually answer, in my opinion, but I'll explain why. D would like to know, what is the oldest elephants in Djuma? And D, the reason why it would be impossible to know that is that elephants live for a very long time, up to 60 years of age, as a rough figure. And for one singular elephant to have been monitored for that amount of time would have been close to impossible in the wild. And not only that, coupled with the fact that they are not territorial, even if they were territorial, it would have required some foresight to start monitoring the age of any given elephants, but I guess you'd have had to have aged all of them to be able to know which one is the oldest. So the only way to find out would be to euthanize the animal and do some dentitioning tests. That would probably be the most accurate way of aging elephants, and you'd obviously have to do it to all of the elephants which look the oldest in order to be able to work out which one is. So that is a question that nobody will be able to answer. But what I can tell you is that there may be some elephants walking around here that are around the 60-year-old brackets. So they do get very old, but we don't have a clue which one's which. They do have the ability to move from here many thousands of miles into other countries. To Travis, one of our newest additions to the safari team, and it's great to know that you're loving it, Travis, and that you want to become a game ranger one day. That's great news. And isn't it hard to believe that it's early morning in Philadelphia, but it's nighttime here? We're about to have dinner after this, and Travis would like to know if we've ever bumped into any animals or things whilst driving home in the dark at night. And Travis, no big animals cause any trouble usually, unless you drive too quickly, but we always drive slowly. But the one animal that causes the most trouble, especially in summer, because summer is when we have the most bugs around, the most insects flying around at night, and they usually get attracted to the headlights of the car. And if you get a big dung beetle, it's a big beetle about that size, flying into your face at night, it can be quite painful. And the reason why I actually switched off the lights now, Travis, and this is one of the first things you'll learn when you become a game ranger in years to come, is that when you come across animals at night, there's some impala, I'll just show you them with a bit of dim light to our side. When you come across animals at night that are daytime animals and don't have good night vision, it's important that you don't shine a bright light in their face, because if you do and then you drive off, they can't see anything. And imagine if a leopard then starts creeping up on this impala that's been blinded by our lights. That's the last thing we'd want to do. We wouldn't want to disadvantage any animals, and imagine how terrifying that would be. It would be like somebody shining a bright light in your eyes, and then before you have time for your eyes to adjust, telling you to cross a road or something like that, blind. And if you want to practice that, I guess you can just go into a very dark room, shine a light into your eyes, a torch, a not very bright one, and then see how long it takes for your eyes to adjust to that dark room. So that's why I switched off my lights there. But Travis, so happy to hear you are enjoying your first safari, and we are going to make sure that we teach as many things as we can now, so that the time you've grown up, you are ready to just jump in a car and take some game drives. We're about to get back to the workshop where Opa is ready and waiting to start surgery on this vehicle. Thank you very much to everyone for the wonderful time spent on safari this afternoon. I had great fun with all of you guys at the Buffelshoek Waterhole. Well done to Jerry and Nikki in the final control room, as well as to Tebs and Jandre, who were both on the back of my vehicle guiding the camera at various points. Over to James.
Well, very good news that Scott is up and running, and, well, briefly anyway. I don't think it was Scott that broke down. Scott is, of course, built of very stern materials, and so he wouldn't break down at all. Nice, the jig is up and going, and we've driven now probably about 5 kilometers since you last saw us, and I'm afraid we've spotted nothing, but that's okay. It's a lovely evening. It's a warm evening, and we will continue searching around here for tracks of leopard, maybe civet. I'd love to see a civet here. I've yet to see one. We did see one bush baby actually while you were away, and we'll try and find some of those. They're out in force at the moment because there are insects all over the place, and so the bush babies will delight in eating the insects. The other day we were walking, Scott, Steph and I, and Steph gave me a piece of acacia gum, a proper piece of acacia gum. I'm just going to stop here. Brian, just up ahead, I will tell you my acacia gum story now. I think there's a little romance going on there. I'm not going to shine a proper spotlight on them. It's two black-bellied korhans. And I think what they're doing is in the process of courtship, not so much dance, but shall we say ritual. Look at that. You see the one's got its tail fluffed out. Isn't that a remarkable sight? Let's sit here for a little while and watch them. Now we often hear that bird, the male, calling, and he makes that very strange call which Brian will now do for you. And that, everybody, is really what it sounds like. I don't know which is which here. I can't tell from this distance which is male and which is female. There's definitely a bit of courtship going on here. Oh! Well, that's interesting. I think they were frightened off by the sound of an impala alarm calling just up ahead. Let's just go and have a look there. Only an alarm called once, so it's unlikely that there's a predator, but maybe. There are a whole lot of impala there. I tell you what, those impala probably couldn't see the birds, and then we put the light on them and they spotted them, and one of them decided he better just sound the alarm in case there was trouble. So we won't shine on the impala, as Scott's just explained to you. I'll turn these side lights off. Sorry, fellows. Like I say, the ewes are looking extremely pregnant. It won't be long now before they start to drop their lambs, hopefully with some grain and therefore something for them to eat, so they can feed their youngsters. Black-bellied korhan is one of two korhan species we get here. We get the other one is called the suicide bird. It's a remarkable thing called the red-crested korhan. And what they do is they make a loud whistling noise, and then they fly up into the air, and they fold their wings and crash to the ground, opening their wings just in time to land. And apparently that's kind of a territorial display, and from where the apex of their climb, a cone out from there is the male's territory. I think he also does it to display to the female so she can come and see him. And then when they mate, they do this ridiculous dance, a bit like the one we were watching there, where neither of them seem particularly interested in the other, but for the fact that the male, and this is where they get the name, the red-crested Quran, he puts out this bright kind of chestnut red crest, and we don't see it otherwise. Only when he's about to try and seduce a lady do you see his red crest. Definitely nothing particularly alarming with those impala to be worried about. The other thing that we look for, of course, at this time of the year are chameleons, and we've spotted quite a few of late. Obviously not tonight. And people are often so amazed by the fact that we can spot chameleons, but it's really not very difficult. If you know what you're looking for, they're a very different green color on the trees when we go past them. It's a great favorite if you're a new guide in an area and you've got guests and you spot chameleons sitting in a tree, and so often your guests are international guests, and maybe if they were from Germany, they'd go, "Oh, James, that is absolutely astonishing. How did you manage to see that chameleon?" And you would then bask in glory, of course, when it was in fact the tracker that has spotted them, and his expert and experienced eyes. The final control says that my German accent was more Swedish than German. I would say that the final control should keep their traps shut for the moment, but we'll discuss that when we get home. Swedish indeed. So we come back south, some impala up ahead, and we're going to head once more down the road called Philemon's Cut Line, and then we'll make our way towards home. Just a last sort of circle around where we thought Karula had been knocking about the place. We'll just give you a quick view of that silhouette there. See if you can spot what we've spotted. Isn't that lovely? Look at that. Beautiful giraffe for Jerry in the final control. Jerry the giraffe. And the twinkling lights of Acorn Hook and Bushbuck Ridge just beyond that. Isn't that lovely? And you can see the smoke in the on the horizon there. Obviously still quite a few forest fires and things that are colouring the horizon. Like I said yesterday, there are a whole lot of forestry plantations up in the lee of the mountains there in the rain shadow. There's a lot more rain than there is here. It's really amazing how much the rain does reduce here. And dry conditions like these are really not good if you happen to be a farmer of trees. I'm being attacked by a beetle. Right, on we go. Thank you very much, Joan. Oh, there is a fire, we can see. Joan, very kind compliment. Thank you, you say, for the adventures that we take you on here at Safari Live, Joan. It is our absolute pleasure and indeed our joy to do so. And I'm so glad that you've been watching us for a while now and enjoying it still. Look, there's a fire. Look at that thing there. You see that, Brian?
Yeah.
So we'll just try and get you a picture of it. Obviously extremely difficult. There you can see it. Big fire there. That's in the forests up in the mountains. So not very good news for insurance companies or farmers. Cool. Ooh, that's big. That's a long way away, everybody. That's probably about 30 kilometers away as the crow flies, if not no more. It's probably about 50 kilometers away as the crow flies. That's a long, long way away, so that's a big fire. 50 kilometers is about 30 miles. So that fire is nowhere near the lights, it's well beyond the lights. So those lights are absolutely fine. There's nothing to burn in the communities at the moment. It's all very kind of dry and grassless, and the cattle out here in these communities are really struggling in this kind of climate. Not nice if you're a farmer. So we've had some really delightful conversations from various people today, especially our young viewers, and thank you very much for your questions, especially about the Earth. I hope that you're feeling better, Travis, after your drive today, and you'll be back at school tomorrow. Thank you. Sorry, 1 second. Thank you so much for the rest of your questions on a quiet drive. It's always so lovely to have the discussions with you, so thank you for that. Welcome back, Brian. Thank you for your efforts. And thank you to Nikki and Jerry in the final control, and Scott and Tebs on the other vehicle, and of course no thanks to Jigger for her performance this evening. We will see you tomorrow morning at 0500, and until then, please keep safe and very happy wherever you happen to be. We'll see you later. Bye bye.